I'm live. Give folks a minute to hop on here. Oh, here they come. Hello, friends. I'm gonna noodle on my mandolin while you guys follow in a little bit here. Good morning out there. Maybe I'll just play a little tune or two while you guys hop on here. Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me. Doing out there. Thank you so much. Well, it is my pleasure to get to be here doing a little morning community meeting. It's morning for me, at least. I'm coming to you from Nashville. I'm not sure where all you guys are located in the world, but I'm here at home, Nashville, Tennessee, Central Time. So it's 11 in the morning here. But I was so looking forward to getting to be part of the Global Musicians Workshop this year. It was, I know, going to be a highlight of my year. You know, I'm primarily a performer, a touring artist, kind of in the acoustic music world, and anytime I get to collaborate with people in different genres, different instrumentations that I don't normally get to perform with or work with, it always leaves me just incredibly inspired. So I was certainly excited to get to spend a whole week with all the amazing faculty that was supposed to be part of the Global Musicians Workshop this year. But here we are, nevertheless. So I'm certainly excited to get to see everybody's community meetings. They've been really great so far. So thank you, Mike Block, and all of the wonderful folks that helped make this thing possible for having me. I'm a mandolin player, if you guys haven't figured that out already. I primarily got started in bluegrass music, and I think, you know, this would have been my first time doing the Global Musicians Workshop. So I've never actually got to experience being there for a community meeting, but it's my understanding it's sort of a way to, you know, understand the background of some of the musicians that are on the faculty, and not just hear performances, but also have a chance to kind of interact and ask some questions. So I'm going to be trying to monitor the comments. Let's see. Yes, nevertheless. Cool, you guys tuned in from Georgia and Iowa. Ireland, 5 p.m. in Ireland. All right, prime time. Happy hour. But anyway, I'll try to keep an eye on the comments. You know, the more that you guys can, you know, interact, the better. I'll gladly dive into talking about anything or playing anything you guys might want to hear if I can do it. But I'll start off by giving those of you that maybe know nothing about me, which is probably most of you, a little bit of background. I'm primarily a mandolin player. I picked up this instrument when I was 8 years old. I'm from Tennessee as well. I said I live here in Nashville, but I grew up in a little town in northern middle Tennessee called Byrdstown, Tennessee, and there's about 900 people that live there. It's a very beautiful rural place to grow up, and if you're a fan of bluegrass music, country music, gospel music, there's certainly a lot of that in that part of the world. So I feel really kind of fortunate to have been able to play this particular instrument growing up in this part of the world. It's not too hard to find a lot of this style of music on the weekends and things like that. Old Dangerfield. Okay, maybe I'll play that first here in a little bit. Thanks, Chip. But yeah, I primarily came to music through, well, I should say I came to the mandolin because of my dad. But I came to music in general just because when you grow up in that part of the world, it's sort of everywhere, and not necessarily people that would call themselves musicians, you know, and in this part of the world, it sort of feels like music is a way of life as much as anything. I grew up, you know, going to a small little church, and like a lot of musicians that I know that kind of go on to play bluegrass in this part of the world, you hear music in church almost before you hear it anywhere else. And so for me, that was certainly the case. I remember my mom teaching me my first vocal song when I was probably, gosh, 3 or 4 years old. I have a memory of that sitting in her lap, and so I always heard, you know, everybody from my great Aunt Betty to my granny, to, you know, my mom and people in the church like sing songs, and I had to dig one of these out because I'm sure some of you guys have seen these, but usually these old hymns. So for me, it wasn't modern music, it was just all old hymns and things like that where, you know, people would just say, oh, sing page, you know, 401 in the red book. So there's something kind of, I think, fun about being able to come to music that way. There's a real kind of innocence to it, to where you're not really trying to be thought of as a musician. You're just singing and making, you know, sound just for the joy of it, which, you know, I think is why we all end up sticking with it as musicians. But so I remember hearing music that way for the first time, but then my dad started getting into bluegrass music. My mom and dad both really love all kinds of things, but especially like 80s rock and things like that. I remember them always loving different things, but my dad got really on a bluegrass kick when I was probably about 7 years old. I remember him kind of getting back into it. I had a great uncle that lived next door, my mom's uncle. His name was Junior, and he was self-taught on the mandolin and the fiddle and the guitar, and honestly he wasn't a skilled musician. He wasn't somebody that had ever had any lessons, you know. He just learned from, I guess, somebody showing him a chord or two, and I don't even remember seeing him play chords on the mandolin. The main thing I remember is just hearing him play tunes, you know, tunes that I still hear, like a good example would be this one. Traveler. probably, I'm sure that's a more advanced version than what he would have played when I was real little, but I remember hearing these kind of sounds, and you know, he would play fiddle, he'd play fiddle in that kind of old-timey way where you wouldn't even put it up to your chin, you'd just hold it down here. And so music was always kind of around. And then when my dad really decided he wanted to learn to play something, my Uncle Junior gave him a guitar, let him borrow one, and he brought it down to our house and started basically learning to play enough chords that he would back my brother and I up while we would sing in church. So, you know, we'd be singing songs and he'd just be strumming chords, and I don't even know that we knew how to sing harmony at that time. A lot of the, you know, I was talking about like learning to sing out of these books. It was really just by using your ears and learning these melodies, memorizing these. Hardly anybody I would have known in these tiny little churches that I grew up in could actually read the music. You know, you might occasionally have a piano player that sort of knew what they were doing, but for the most part it was all pretty mountainy and all by ear. So I think early on I was probably somewhat training my ear to hear melodies and remember melodies just from hearing these old hymns and things like that. But then, yeah, my dad, he decided to learn to play guitar a little bit, and apparently when he was a kid, he always wanted a mandolin, but never could afford to get one. So when he became an adult, he saved his money, bought a mandolin, and started going to some local bluegrass festivals, which is where I kind of ended up tagging along and deciding I wanted to play as well. So, you know, in the bluegrass world, most of the people I know started like I did, where you just, somebody puts an instrument in your hand and they say, okay, here's how you make a G chord. All right, here's a 2-finger G chord, very simple. You know, eventually learn to add all 4 fingers. You know, you learn your first few chords, and then somebody typically teaches you a tune before you ever learn a scale, which I know is kind of different than some sort of teaching techniques in different genres of music, but it's very much a style of music that's based off of this repertoire that's been handed down for many years now, kind of starting with Bill Monroe and a lot of the tunes that he wrote, people like Flatt and Scruggs, Stanley Brothers, you know, the list kind of goes on and on of some of the first generation bluegrass people. So it's not really an old form of music. I think Bill Monroe, you know, they claim started bluegrass in 1946, so if you think about it, it's not that old of a music form, but it's certainly inspired by a multitude of things, from blues to Irish Scotch music, you know, of course the old kind of mountain gospel music that, you know, is sort of similar to what I would have grown up with, but even further. So anyway, I think there's something kind of sweet about coming to music like that, in a way, because it really sort of, you start learning music right off the bat just simply for the joy of learning to play. So for me, when my dad put a mandolin in my hands when I was probably, I think I was 8 years old, I got a violin for Christmas, a fiddle. That's what I wanted, a fiddle. And my granny and my great aunt and uncle went in together and they bought me a fiddle. Well, I wanted to learn to play something because my brother was learning to play banjo and guitar a little bit at the time. So I thought, well, you know, he's my only sibling, my older brother. I wanted to do everything he did. So I thought, okay, I want to learn to play something too. So I got this fiddle for Christmas and I was super excited to think about learning to play. But my dad, he knew there was different sizes of fiddles, violins, and so he told him, yeah, oh, Mike, you don't want to see me play the fiddle. So I can play slow stuff okay, but beyond that, it gets pretty bad. Pretty much stick to the mandolin and guitar, but anyway, he told them, make sure you get her a small fiddle. But they didn't know any better, you know, and so they went somewhere and they found this full-size fiddle. And, you know, it was just too big for me to handle at the time. So I ended up trying to play something on it, and it was pretty clear I couldn't reach way. And so my dad said, well, he said, the mandolin and the fiddle are tuned alike, you know, so of course the mandolin has 8 strings, but they're tuned in pairs, so you have 2 E's, 2 A's, 2 Ds, and 2 Gs. But essentially, when you play one, you play through both strings. So you don't ever really hear two separately like that. Very, very rarely would anybody use that kind of a technique. So essentially, the notes are all in the same place because the tuning is the same. And so, of course, there's quite the difference between using a flat pick or a bow. But my dad nevertheless said, well, I've just bought a mandolin. I'm learning to play. How about I show you how to play a little something on the mandolin, and then we'll get you a smaller fiddle, and you'll eventually be able to reach it, and you'll already know where to put your fingers. You know, you'll just have to figure out the bow. So, fair enough. Sounded good. Remember, he taught me the tune Bull Them Cabbage Down, which some of you bluegrass folks would know, but very simple tune. You know, and I think it's something like that, you know? And so I just remember immediately feeling like, wow, I can't believe I'm learning to play some music on an instrument. And so it took me a little while to actually get a smaller fiddle. And in the meantime, I was learning stuff on the mandolin, and it pretty much just immediately clicked, and I decided I wanted to play the mandolin, that was going to be my instrument. So later got a fiddle. Yes, I wish in some ways I had stuck with it. My granny always really loved the fiddle, but mandolin it was for me. So yeah, I just started learning tunes like this, and kind of in the same vein that everybody does. You know, there's a whole catalog of tunes like Red-Haired Boy, or Old Joe Clark was maybe the next tune I learned. I'll play a version of that. You guys, I'm sure, know some of these tunes. I see a few familiar folks tuning in that I know these tunes well. I'm going to go scroll back here through the comments. I think I missed a couple, but mostly telling me where you guys are coming from. Well, thanks to everybody that's tuning in. Thanks, Mike. But you know, like, I remember learning some of these tunes, and you start to learn, you know, 5, 10 tunes in A, and then you learn, you know, 5 or 10 tunes in D, and then, you know, maybe you learn one in C. I know some of you have tuned in a little later, but I kicked off while everybody was kind of hopping on here by playing, let's see, Billy in the Low Ground. That one. And so, in C. So, you know, quickly you start to put the dots together, even though at the time nobody was actually teaching me any music theory, or I wasn't really learning music off a page. I was mostly just learning from somebody saying, whether it was my dad who was learning some of these tunes and teaching me, or at a jam, occasionally, you know, you'd hear tunes and they'd play through the form enough that you'd start to be able to remember these tunes. I think somebody back here, let me just see, I may be mistaken, but I think somebody back here said they saw me at Pine Haven Community Center, which is a real throwback. Gosh, that's a while ago, I guess. But anyway, whoever you, oh, here we go. Sean Sexton started listening to Sierra when she would come to old Pine Haven School. So yeah, I used to go with my dad on the weekends to these jam sessions, and I was really lucky to kind of have that within 30 minutes away or something. And so this old schoolhouse, Pine Haven Community Center, would host jams every Friday night. So essentially I would just go and I would sit in the back room with all of these, you know, bluegrass musicians, and they had a little stage up front that you could sit there and, you know, have your hamburger or hot dog and hear some local bluegrass, if you were just someone in the community that loved, you know, being able to come out and hear some music on the weekend. But if you really didn't want to be on stage, or you didn't want to just listen to the music, there was also usually 2 or 3 jams going on in the back. So that's where we would go. And eventually, I think I had my first live performance on that stage there as well. But it was just such a beautiful environment to have these people welcome me into their circle when they would be jamming. And you know, I only knew a handful of tunes, but I was starting to learn how to play chords. Already knew some chords, and you know, would watch what people were doing in the jams. And so I think, like, when you're growing up or even just starting to play music, I can't stress how important it is to just listen to music. I mean, I think, like, there's so many things to be learned from books and off the page, and certainly there's a part of me as a musician that wishes that I'd had a little bit more experience with those things as a younger musician, because I've only in recent years started to learn to be able to read music a little better, and I'm still not great at it. You know, I'm still really slow, but I am grateful that I had this early experience with ear and watching people and all those things. But all right, we got some comments here, some questions, so I'm gonna back it up a little bit, see if I can answer some of those as we go along. I appreciate you guys tuning in. Okay, here's one. What was it like studying at Berkeley? So yeah, so grew up a bluegrass musician, mostly living in that bluegrass world for, you know, quite a while. I'd say the first good 10 years of my life were mostly playing nothing but bluegrass. And it's not that I didn't love other things, but I think when you really dig into something, what is it they say? It takes like 10,000 hours to really, you know, become an expert at something. And I think that that can be really true, you know, that in order to really become grounded in something, you really have to fully immerse yourself. And so I'm really thankful that I sort of had this really intense focus for at least the first 10 years or so of my musical life that were really spent in bluegrass music, which I think is a wonderful style of music, kind of much like classical, that really, though it's not talked about as much, it's talked about in a much different way, I think, in a more casual sense, but there is a certain amount of, you know, technical ability that's required to really play bluegrass tunes and all those fiddle tunes really well. But the question was, what was it like going to Berkeley, and did I ever get into playing jazz standards? So fast forward, I've been playing, you know, since I was 8, and really kind of wanted nothing more. I mean, from the time I was 8 years old, I decided that I wanted to be a musician. That's what I wanted to do with my life. I've never really quite looked back since. There was never a time of me imagining that I wanted to do anything else. You know, it was always like, this is what I have to do because I can't imagine doing anything else. So I pretty much knew I wanted to tour, I wanted to make records like all my heroes and stuff, and hadn't really considered too much about what it would be like to go to music school, because I grew up in a small town, like I said, and, you know, went to this small school, so a lot of my teachers, I remember playing for my 3rd grade class, playing mandolin and going up to my teacher and saying, look, I'm getting calluses because I'm learning to play the mandolin. And, you know, so she said, oh, you're learning to play the mandolin, come play for the class. So my dad came and we played some tunes for my 3rd grade class. But, you know, everybody kind of knows everybody when you grow up in a town like that. So my teachers had really followed me from the time I was super little till, you know, I was a high school student, and had kind of followed as different things in my career had started to happen. And I knew that they were always great about being flexible when I needed to, you know, if I got an opportunity to go play somewhere, that I could go do that. But I thought, if I go to college, I don't really know how that's going to work out, because I'm just going to be, you know, probably a number, and nobody's going to really personally know me too well. So I hadn't really considered it that much, because I wanted to go out and I wanted to play music. But the opportunity came for me to go to Berkeley. Somebody from the school saw a video of me playing online and reached out and said, if you're considering going to school, we'd really love to have you come to Berkeley. And so honestly, I'm embarrassed to say it now, but I don't even think I knew what Berkeley was. I mean, at that time, you know, it just wasn't talked about very much in the bluegrass acoustic world about the idea of somebody going to music school or to college, because most of the people I grew up playing with, even the professional musicians, didn't study music professionally. They've just had years of learning from albums and CDs and jams, and they go on to be these incredible, you know, musicians through kind of a different path. And so anyway, I remember one of my biggest heroes is Alison Krauss, and she's been also a wonderful mentor over the years. I got to meet her when I was really young, and I remember kind of just telling her, like, yeah, I got this this note from somebody at Berkeley about, you know, them maybe giving me a scholarship if I want to come to school there. She was like, oh, Berkeley, yeah, I've been to Berkeley. I've like done some, you know, she'd stopped in and done some guest clinics and things like that there. And she was just like, I really think that you should at least go check it out, because she said your career is always going to be here, but what an incredible opportunity that it could be if you really wanted to go to music school. So, you know, I kind of went, okay, well, if Alison Krauss is telling me I should check out Berkeley, maybe I should really, maybe I should think about this. So I did. I went up there and I visited the school, came home, and, you know, knew I was going to get a full tuition scholarship, but they also told me about this thing called the Presidential Award, and that it would be possible that I could get this scholarship that would completely pay for everything, you know, housing, and it would be for 4 years. So I thought, well, there's no way I'm going to get that. So I just really had kind of put that thought out of my mind and wasn't going to let that. But I remember kind of telling myself when I was there, you know how sometimes you just have these internal thoughts or feelings. I remember kind of thinking like, okay, well, if for some crazy reason I do get this presidential award, which I'm not going to, but if I do, then I have to come. Otherwise, I'm not really so sure. I'm not sure that I'm ready to like uproot and leave Tennessee, you know, move to Boston. I was 17 when I graduated, and it just felt kind of crazy to think about going directly to Boston and leaving all the people that I was playing music with at the time in Tennessee, and kind of being that far away, not really knowing anybody at the time. And so I kind of put the thought out of my head. So then I decided with the scholarship that I was going to get initially to defer for a year. I was going to take 1 year and just wait and start the next fall should I decide to do it. And they basically called me on the day I was going to say I wanted to defer. Somebody from the school called me and said, we've decided to give you the Presidential Award, and you'll be the first person that's a bluegrass musician to, you know, have this scholarship. And so I just kind of was like, oh no, which of course I was like completely floored that I would get this scholarship, and honored to, you know, be able to perhaps represent bluegrass in a way at a school like Berkeley. But I was definitely like, oh gosh, you know, I thought I wasn't going to go, and now I know I have to go. So anyway, I decided to go, and it was just an unbelievable experience. Everybody there was just so wonderful. Everybody, you know, is coming from different backgrounds all over the world, different ways that they grew up playing, whether it was like me. Plenty of people, at that time the American Roots program was starting, and it was a beautiful time to be there because there were all these amazing, you know, friends and musicians, people that are now some of my dearest friends, that were living in Boston at the time and going either there or the Boston Conservatory, New England Conservatory, I mean. So it was just great, and I feel like having never had a real experience with school, or actually just, you know, a more structured, should I say, learning environment like that. I'd never worked on music in that way, or like tried to, you know, learn from a page, which now sounds really crazy to me that I hadn't, but honestly, I just didn't grow up around it and didn't really know that many musicians that could read music. So it all felt very new. It felt very overwhelming at times. I felt very like, wow, these people are being so nice to me, and they're going to realize like that. I felt like these people, they gave me this award and they think that I know more than I know, and I'm just gonna disappoint them because they're gonna realize, you know, she doesn't even know what the first inversion of a chord means. I knew how to play it, but I didn't know what to call it. And so I think that's the thing that we realize. There's a lot of different ways that you can learn music. You can come at it from all these different ways, and in some ways achieve the same goal. You just may not always know all the proper terminology, but that's something I've worked on as I've gotten older. I realize I'm really rambling. That's the long answer on that one. But I think the second part of the question was, did I ever get into playing any jazz standards? Very little. I mean, you know, had my foundation in bluegrass, and then as I've gotten older, I've gotten really into all kinds of different styles of music. None that I've fully immersed myself in the way I did all those years with bluegrass music, but I think that bluegrass certainly gave me the foundation to be able to play, you know, a lot of different things. So I'm grateful to kind of have that foundation. But I've learned a couple things along the way, but yeah, I'm definitely, I would in no way consider myself like a real jazz player. Maybe I'll play you guys, this is an old traditional jazz number that I worked up a little version of a few years back, if I can remember it. Let's see, this is After You've Gone. I would have just learned that, you know, that's an old jazz standard. I came to that through hearing Django Reinhardt and Stefan Grappelli on a duo album play that, and the guitar solo was so awesome. I actually tried to quote a lot of, they play it in G, I think, in the version. Anyway, that whole, I just love that part, but anyway, I just was like, okay, I'd love that, and I think I'd love to learn that. And there was a little bit of like that vocal scat part that the guy does. I'm not even sure who the singer is on that particular recording, but you know, he just sings a little piece of the song. And so I thought, well, gosh, I'd love to really actually like learn to play it in a key that I can sing it in, and you know, try to sing the full thing. And then I think I heard Ella Fitzgerald or somebody like that do a version where, you know, she had the thing at the end. You made me sad and blue, and now I'm through with you. So anyway, I just was, you know, kind of combining some ideas, both of my own, but also inspired by other people's version of the song to kind of, you know, create a little mandolin fun version of that. So but yeah, I've learned a few jazz things. I love listening to jazz. I think that it can be really inspiring to, you know, put on music that you're not necessarily sitting down and learning, but just listening to music. I think you can learn as much from listening as anything else. So anyway, let's see. How did I find my voice? Well, thank you, David. I really appreciate that. Well, I think, you know, early on, like I said, I remember learning to sing before I ever learned to play anything on the mandolin, but it was really when I picked up the mandolin that I decided, okay, I want to become a musician. And the thing that I find that's interesting about the voice versus the instrument, you can change, you can play mandolin, you can play guitar, you can play a different type of mandolin, like an A style or a mandola or an octave mandolin, all these different things, and you can kind of have your technique, and you can interchange and suddenly have a different voice from one instrument to the next. But when it comes to your actual singing voice, you're kind of, in some ways, I feel like given what you're given, you know, and you can take that and grow that into just something. But it took me a long time, I think, to really, longer than I wish it did, to really feel like I enjoyed the sound of my own voice. And I've always loved singing. I loved singing harmony. My brother would sing lead a lot when I was younger, and I would always, you know, be the harmony singer. And in bluegrass music especially, it's more of a male-dominated genre, and it had, you know, less and less these days because there's so many great players out there, but and more women than ever before. But a lot of the songs would be in keys like B, you know. There's a well-beaten path on this old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. I mean, you know, it's too low for my voice to do it. So, like, I might have to do it in D or E. There's a well-beaten path on this old mountainside where I wandered when I was a lad. And honestly, for the banjo, in most jams, people like to be able to take that capo and move it anywhere from G to B, maybe C, but not always, you know, the favorite of the banjo community out there in bluegrass music, because the banjo sounds different in D than G, and I think a lot of players just know how to play out of open positions better, maybe, because that's what they've spent time playing along with on recordings. So, you know, I would typically not be the one to sing the traditional songs because of simply the keys that they were primarily played and sung in, which is never a problem when you're playing tunes, you know. But I think that once I started writing my own music and getting into, you know, being able to just kind of put genre aside a little bit and sing things that I really felt like fit my voice, and even, you know, melodies and lyrics that felt personal or inspired to me, that's when I've really, you know, started to feel like a singer, more than maybe I did. I've always been a singer. I've always felt like a singer, so maybe I shouldn't put it that way. I've always loved to sing, and I've never, you know, not thought of myself as a singer, but I've definitely, you know, certainly spent more time working on singing in the past, you know, 10 years than ever before. Actually, when I went to Berkeley, that was the first time I'd ever been able to have a vocal lesson. I've only probably had a handful of vocal lessons in my life, but I've always found them to be just incredibly inspiring, and you know, I just learned to sing through doing, same as playing mandolin. So I think that, you know, sometimes you get these habits and things that you kind of have to break, and so taking vocal lessons when I've had those opportunities has been really awesome too. Let's see. I think, you know what? I forget who it was. I told somebody that I would play Old Dangerfield, and I forgot. See, I ramble too much and I forgot. So I don't know how long I've been on here. So Mike, I know you're out there watching. When you feel like it's time for me to stop my rambling ways, just let me know. But here's Old Dangerfield. This is a tune that's a Bill Monroe tune. Which, you know, we call all these tunes fiddle tunes, even the ones that Bill maybe would have written on the mandolin. We still think of them as fiddle tunes, but this is, I don't remember exactly where I would have first learned it, you know, not from Bill, honestly. I think I would have learned it in jams before I learned his version, but still one of my favorites to play. Like that. I haven't played that one in a while. That's a fun one though. Let's see. Saw some other questions go by. Let's see. Oh, you're asking if I would grab the guitar. I think it's downstairs, but I could go get it. So yeah, like asking if, you know, if it seems I've been playing a fair amount of guitar lately. I have actually. So I started out playing mandolin, had 8, as I said, but then I picked up guitar about a year later because it felt like a natural progression to pick up the guitar. You know, the technique is very similar, I find. I don't really change technique a whole lot between mandolin and guitar, but then I did an album called Weighted Mind back in 2016 it was released, and that was sort of me putting together some things that were definitely outside of the bluegrass world. I've always written tunes that weren't bluegrass tunes and always, you know, found myself like gravitating toward other things, but that was really the first time that I'd recorded something that kind of shared that side of me a little bit more. And I sort of I worked with Bela Fleck, one of my heroes, as the producer on that album, and we sort of just decided that it would be interesting to try to use mandolin more like a guitar in the way that it would accompany my voice, as opposed to, you know, you see a lot of singer-songwriter guitars, and of course I've done a lot of that myself over the year, and playing guitar and backing up a vocal. But in bluegrass, you know, like usually if you're singing something, you know, you're playing a chop, you know, which is very much like a snare drum. And especially when you're part of an ensemble, you really get to, you know, play a part of the rhythm section, so you don't really need to be playing a whole bunch of lines and stuff, because the band format is such that a lot of that color is already, you know, accounted for, and you kind of would be stepping on people and that kind of thing. So doing this record where everything was kind of so stripped down, it gave me more opportunity to just play solo, and to take some of the songs that I had written and reimagine them in a way that I don't have to play all this, but for instance, the title track of that is this song called "Weight in Mine," and it has this kind of this riff that continues under the vocal line. I'll do the first little bit. Should I lead? Should I lay low? If I ask you, will you even know? From the roof to the ground, these walls must come down. So anyway, that kind of a thing where, you know, you have this almost like a bass line that also has the built into it. So you know, I could have just done this. Should I lead? Should I lay low? If I ask you, you know. So if I had a band setting, which I've been touring with a band back in the good old days when we could tour. I was just starting to get back into a full band format, and even use drums and kind of re-envision these songs yet again to work in a full band setting. And it's not that you can't play something like this and it not get in the way, but it definitely means that you have to kind of rethink some of the things that's happening around. But, you know, if I was gonna do this in a bluegrass band, you know, I might be doing more of a chop instead of playing the bass notes and the backbeat. So anyway, I've really worked a lot the last few years on being able to play melodies and things that accompany my voice behind the vocal, which, you know, really just means sitting here and going, okay, you know, getting so familiar. For me, it's a matter of practicing things really slowly, which I think is probably good advice, you know, no matter what you're working on. But being able to take something like this and be able to do it extremely slowly, and then go, you know, okay, on what beat does my vocal fall? And trying to train my left and right hand to feel so comfortable and to kind of internalize the groove enough that you don't have to think about it too much. Because if I was thinking about what I had to play, it's sort of like, you know, trying to talk while you're playing a melody. You know, sometimes I can do it, and then sometimes I stutter, or I can't play. So I think that's been something I've tried to work a lot on, is being able to play these lines underneath my voice. So basically, I just didn't have guitar for, going back to the question, didn't go back to guitar for a while because I was using the regular mandolin. I've got an octave mandolin back here, using, you know, these instruments as well that kind of live in the guitar range a little bit more. And then I was touring with this great bassist named Ethan Yojevitz. So anyway, I definitely had plenty of time to like work on trying to make mandolin the center of filling the space, you know, that a band would normally fill. But I did play loads of guitar when I was a kid, especially, you know, I've spent my fair share of hours learning Tony Rice songs on the guitar and solos, and playing those fiddle tunes. I entered a few contests, you know, when I was really young at some of the, you know, fiddle jamborees and stuff like that. So maybe I'll go grab it here in a second. Like I said, it's downstairs, so you guys would just have to wait on me a minute. But let's see, somebody asked me about this particular mandolin. This mandolin is really not that old. It's a 2009, and it's a Gibson Master Model built by a guy named Dave Harvey, and I've had it basically since it was about a month old. I think I played it for the first time, and then he did a couple things to it, like made the neck a little bit smaller. He scalloped out the fretboard there so that I wouldn't hit this. And it has a little bit of an aged finish, but it's, you know, my husband laughed and he goes, man, that mandolin's really looking old now. He told me that a couple days ago. And I was like, I know, it's because I've traveled with it so much, I've played it so much, and, you know, inevitably they get some wounds. Maybe it's a sign of bad technique, I don't know. But it's really not that old of an instrument. It's just, you know, it's logged a lot of time and hours with me, and it's really grown to be a great instrument. It has a flat fingerboard, which, you know, all the old Gibsons always had, you know, until they started doing radius fretboards, you know, I don't know, like maybe the 80s. I'm terrible with knowing the timeline on all that stuff, but I've gotten really used to it, and I like this mandolin a lot because it has such a clear bell-like tone on the upper range. You know, so very fun. Let's see. Maybe I'll play you guys another little something. I know somebody said they wanted to hear everybody's talking, so maybe let me play you one of the first things that I remember learning when I was younger. I was probably oh, my manager texted me and said, can't see your right hand. Can you guys not see me good? Sorry. I'll try to scooch up. My phone's screwed up. It won't flip this way. So I ended up using the iPad, which I don't have a good stand for. So hopefully I'll sit up a little so you guys can see. This is the first thing that I really remember learning when I was really young. I was probably 9 or so when I learned this, and it's one of the first instances I remember of really feeling the emotion of playing music, if that makes sense. I remember being excited when I would learn tunes, or, you know, think, oh, this is cool. You know, I got really obsessed with the tune Tennessee Blues. Got really obsessed with that one. It's all I wanted to play for a while when I was little. But this next one, I remember learning it and thinking, wow, like I really felt like the beauty of the song. So I'll play it. I learned this. I'll play it kind of a more chord melody version of it than just, you know, since I'm playing solo. But I learned it from a book called 30 Fiddle Tunes from the Mandolin. And it had tab, which was one of the ways. I didn't read music as a kid, but I could, you know, get some tablature, and that was helpful, which is just a number system. It tells you what fret to put your finger, and what string, what fret, by number. And so I had that, and there was a little CD that went along with it. And if you're just learning to play mandolin, I would really suggest checking this book out, because it's really great. 30 Fiddle Tunes for the Mandolin, Butch Baldassare, lots of great tunes, some that people play a lot, like Cherokee Shuffle, I think, is in there. But then there's some more obscure ones that I pretty much never hear. But I thought of this song a few years back for the first time since I was like 9, because like I said, I don't really know anybody that plays it. And I thought of it several years back, and it almost made me cry when I played it, because I just remembered that feeling of thinking, wow, I can't believe that I can, you know, learn to play an instrument and create this kind of beautiful sound. So anyway, it's a pretty tune. It's called Azalea Waltz. Part was what I really loved. Yeah, you gotta learn it. It's such a great tune. But I think there's something like really exciting, you know, when you're learning all these tunes that are kind of 2 or 3 chords, which is very common in some of those great bluegrass fiddle tunes. But I think being able to hear a melody, you know, it's so pretty. So, I've always been attracted to these different tonalities, and as I've gotten into, you know, different styles of music. Oh, somebody said a John Mcgann story. So John was my teacher at, he was my teacher at Berkeley. When I got to go there, believe it or not, they had a mandolin teacher. How cool. Still do. But John passed away a couple years after I was a student there, and I was just always inspired by how deep he was as a musician. There was like so many different styles that he could play flawlessly, and not only that, but he really had a real knowledge of the history of all these different styles of music, and always as a teacher made me feel really comfortable because he understood. I think one of the worries I had when I went to Berkeley as a student is, yeah, they're going to figure out that I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just playing music, and I've sort of learned to play through years of doing it, but you know, it's like from a technical standpoint, I just didn't have that background or the vocabulary to really talk about music at that time in a more studious way, I suppose. But he always made me feel like, well, you know, that's the reason you're here. There's, you know, all these different things that we all have to work on, and you're really good at these things, and you want to be better at these things, and so, you know, he always had this real beautiful spirit and patience. I have this set of tunes that I learned from him. Maybe I'll play that for you guys. It's like a set of Celtic tunes that I actually learned in three different times, or maybe I just recorded them. I can't even remember now, but at some point decided to kind of put them all together as a tribute to John. So I don't remember all the names of them, but I'll just play them. all those pieces from John, and I remember like thinking those were such cool pieces of music and tunes. But he had so many things, you know, that he could. I wish that I could still be studying with him today. I was a student at Berkeley for 2 years. I ended up doing a 2-year artist diploma program, which was something they kind of allowed me to do, or to be, I guess, one of the first people to do. I think it's something that some of my friends have since done, but it's a way to kind of choose the things you want to work on in 2 years. And so those 2 years with John kind of flew by, but I feel really, really grateful to have been able to have that kind of time with him and work on that. But let's see, what else? I could just keep playing, but let's see if you guys got anything else you want to. I've probably missed some of the questions. I think somebody was asking me about maybe strings and picks and all that kind of fun, nerdy mandolin gear talk. I'll say I'm not a real gearhead. I always tell people that I'm not somebody that stresses too much over constantly trying different things. If I have things that I feel like are working or, you know, feeling comfortable, I tend to kind of live in that zone for a while. And but I would say almost to a fault, it means that I sometimes use a certain thing like a pick for a really long time, and then I'll change my pick for whatever reason randomly and decide that I'm actually really enjoying something else more. So last minute, yeah, I'll play that here in just a second. But anyway, so for years when I first started, I used a pick like this. This is a triangle, not a triangle, a teardrop shape pick. You know, I think I use like some of the, you know, cheaper Dunlop picks. They don't last quite as long as these, but they're way more affordable when I was younger. And actually before blue chip picks was really a thing. Blue chip is the brand of this one. It's been around for a long time now. This particular one, he recently, Matt, the guy who makes these, lives out in East Tennessee, and so he recently sent some to my husband and I, and he always puts our name on the back. Well, what's funny is now I'm using one with my husband's name on the back, Justin Moses. I think he's using an old one with my name on it, which is just kind of funny coincidence. But for years I used this shape, and somewhere along the line I started using a triangle pick. Let me see if I have one in my case, because it's possible. I don't know if it's in the case. Yeah, probably. Maybe I have one in here. Let's see. Yeah, so for years I was using this shape right here, which is bigger. You know, it's got the it's got the three points on each side, whereas this teardrop has 2 rounded edges and a point. Whoops. But I've always used the point. That's just what I started with. You know, I was just talking to Sam Bush, one of my mandolin heroes, the other day. He uses the rounded edge. Somebody like David Grisman uses a rounded edge, but Adam Steffi or Chris Thiele use the point. You know, it's like different sounds, different things you get used to. I think that's kind of the beauty of us as individuals, as musicians. You can try lots of things and see what works. But I was using this pick literally for probably the past, I don't know, 8 years. Not this very pick, but this shape of pick. Sometimes a 55. I'd recently gotten to a 60. And then as I've been playing more guitar, and because it's been a while since I've really been playing much guitar, and I've gotten back into that, this felt better on the guitar, the teardrop shape. So I was kind of just, you know, played mandolin, I would use this, playing guitar, I would use this shape. And then I was in the studio, I just finished about 6 days of working on a record with Sturgill Simpson, and who's making a bluegrass album. And a lot of the music I'm making myself isn't so traditional anymore in the bluegrass vein. So really, I mean, I know I'm playing some things for you guys today, like, you know, some of those fast tunes and things like that. But some of the things that I'm playing regularly when as a vocalist or isn't always that kind of hard driving bluegrass stuff these days. And so I was in the studio totally playing bluegrass, and it was super fun. And so I had a little bag of just stuff, you know, strings and whatnot, and thought, you know, whatever we were doing, it just, the first track didn't feel that we cut. I was using this pick, and I mean, they sound similar. I think, you know, with your technique, that's why I'm always a believer that technique is way more important than gear, because good technique can actually get the job done. In most cases, even if you have a different instrument or a different pick, all that stuff, it does make a difference. Good instruments, you know, totally make a difference. But, you know, I don't typically obsess about picks too much, but I changed to this one, and I've really been enjoying the last, you know, couple weeks of using this teardrop shape again. I think there's, especially when it comes to tremolo, as opposed to, I don't know if you'll be able to hear the difference. I mean, whatever. Sitting here sounds kind of similar. I was also listening with headphones over a mic, but yeah, so I've been using this guy as of the last 2 weeks for, you know, the first time in 8 years or so that I've actually been using a teardrop, and I've been digging it. So there you go. But Matt, the blue chip guy, sent me all these, and he sent my husband some of these, so now I his. Strings, I use Diaderio Strings. I might have some of those in my case I could show you. Oh, I don't have any. Anyway, well, Diaderio, they're great. I've changed them a lot less while being home than I do on the road. If I'm on the road traveling, I change strings every couple shows at least. When I'm just at home, I tend to get a little bit lazier about it, but I've been in the studio, so these aren't too old right now. And as I have things like that I'm doing, I definitely make sure and have a fresh set. And if you haven't changed your strings in a while and you put on a fresh set, you can almost forget how much that it can be inspiring to play on a fresh set of strings. So if you're feeling like you need a little inspiration in your playing life, maybe just change those strings. It'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. All right, maybe I'll play something else. Let's see. Oh yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I think that you can take old songs and sort of make them new, or have the inspiration. I can't think of any. Yeah, we always got to talk about our picks and strings. You know, I've always wrote different pieces, written things along the way, and this next piece is one I recorded on the Way to Mind album, but I didn't write the main bulk of the song that you hear, but you'll hear an instrumental piece that I did write, so I kind of put the two things together. So this is The Queen of Hearts, which is an old traditional ballad, combined with an instrumental piece of mine called Royalty. Young men are plenty but sweet what shall I do? So that's the Queen of Hearts / royalty. Okay. I'll maybe play a couple more things. I don't want to hold you guys on here all day. But let's see. So I have this friend named Sophia who lives out in California. She's a great young mandolin player. And she's asking if I can play Brilliancy, which is one of my favorite Sam Bush songs. So why not? Just for you, Sophia. If I can remember it. And if you guys haven't heard Sam Bush's version, gotta check it out. His tune. Brilliancy, Sam Bush. Thanks for watching, Sophia. Hope you're having fun. Still playing lots of mandolin. Can't wait till we can jam again. All right. Any last questions? I just want to say, again, big thank you to Silkroad, and thank you, Mike, for helping us host these community meetings online. I hope that sometime I can be part of the Global Musicians Workshop and us all actually get to be together. Kind of some crazy times we're living in. I know we've probably all been feeling a lot of the same crazy emotions. I know I've definitely had my fair share of cries and strange feelings and all these kind of heavy times, but I really do hope that 2020 will make us all that much stronger and maybe open our eyes to some things that we, you know, had been kind of keeping them shut to. So let's see. Maybe I'll do a little medley of sorts. One of the things I just wanted to say, oh, last minute, I forgot about that one. Okay, yeah, maybe I'll play that one. One of the things, maybe I'll play that and then go into a little bit of this other thing. So the last minute is one of my tunes off of my newest album. Thanks for listening to it. But one of the things I wanted to say that I think is really beautiful about the many groups of musicians that are part of these community meetings and the Global Musician Workshop is that, you know, it's people from all kinds of different backgrounds and styles and places in the world. And I find that really inspiring because I really think that there's something to be said. I think as musicians, sometimes we can think that there's a whole lot that separates these different types of genres and separates one style of music from another style. And there are things like when you speak the language of bluegrass or you speak the language of jazz or classical or, you know, pop music. There's all these things that definitely make the various styles of music have their own identity. But I really think that the lines that are kind of in between these styles of music really are easily crossed. You know, I think that if you love a style of music and you spend time listening to that style of music, there's no reason you can't kind of dive in and learn things from all kinds of different genres and how they're all really connected and similar. So I just want to say that because I think it's really inspiring. Like, had we all been able to be together and collaborate, I know it would have been a lot of fun and a beautiful thing to sort of see how all these different styles and things come together in what I believe would have probably been a pretty beautiful, flawless way. So, all right, well, I'll leave you with just a little medley of things then. Thank you guys for watching and tuning in, and hopefully I'll see all of you somewhere out there on the road. Thanks for your time this morning or this evening, wherever you're watching from. Strings, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks again to Silkroad, and hopefully I'll see you guys again sometime real soon. Be well wherever you are in the world, and yeah, maybe we'll see you for real at the Global Musician one of these days. Thank you guys. Have a great day.